Alright, Chapter 6, Mastering Your Mind, How to Run Your Brain, Don't Find Fault, Find a Remedy, Henry Ford. This chapter is about finding remedies. We talked about so far about what would change if you wish and change your life, what kind of state would empower you, what kind of state would leave you unlimited. In this section, you're going to learn how to change your state, you can do whatever you want, when you want it. People don't usually lack reach, with a lack control over their reach. Over this chapter will teach you how to be in control, with how to get more joyous to style with the life, with how to change with your state, with your action. Those results you produce with the body, but they all matter for the moment. The model of change I teach you with the neuro-linguistic program, teach you the very different one used for the many schools of therapy, the therapeutic canon with the physique of the assorted school, within some familiar with become something with a cultural totem. And a large number of the therapists believe that in order to change you have to go back with the deep state of the see with the negative with the experience with them again, idea with the people that the negative experience with the life, with the build up inside of them of the liquid until finally there's no more room and they burst or overflow. The only way to give it a touch with this prophet therapist said is re-experience the events, pain all over again and try to let it go with the once and for all. With everything that is my experience with it tells one with the least for the effect of the way to help people with their problems in the first place. We ask the people to go back and re-experience some of the terrible trauma, the putting them into one of the most painful, least for the resourceful state they could be in, to put someone in with the unresourceful state of the change with the produce of the new resource of the behavior, the result of the greatly diminished. In fact, for the approach may even reinforce the painful, unresourceful pattern with the continue with the excess of the neurological state with the limitation and pain becomes much easier for the trigger of these states in the future. The more you relieve and experience, the more likely you are to use it again. Maybe to move on with the traditional therapy to take so long to produce the result. But I have some good news. There are some good friends who are therapists sincerely they care about their patient, believe that what they're doing that make a difference. The traditional therapy does produce the results. However, the question, could these results produce the least pain with the patient within a short period of time? And the answer is yes, with the model with the action of the most effective therapist in the world, which is exactly Bandler and Grinder did. In fact, with the mastering, simply understanding how the brain works and how you become their own therapist, your own personal consultant, you go beyond therapy to being able to change with the feel and emotion behavior for yourself in a matter of moment. The producing more effective of the results here, or begin believing in the creating of the new model with the process of change, with the belief that your problem stood up with the inside with your intuition, you overflow with exactly what you experience. You'll experience instead all of the pain building up like with a lethal fluid, and some of the neurology activity is more like a jukebox. What really happens with the human being with the having with the experience with the being recorded with the restored with the brain with the like record with the jukebox with the records with the jukebox. Can be played back at the time with the stimulus for the environment and the trick with the right button is pushed. So we choose to remember to experience with the push button, then play the song, happiness, joy, or enjoy whether we can push the button to the create with the pain and the therapeutic pain plan involved with hitting with the button and create with the pain time, and again and then you may aim for with a very negative state that you wish to change. I think you need to do something completely different, but perhaps you could simply reprogram your jukebox and simply play a completely different song. You hit the same button instead of playing the sad song that brings up the static one instead, or one else could re-record over the disc that you could take the old memories and change them. The point of the records are being played are not going to build up and explode. Observe that. That's absurd. Just as simple to proceed with the reprogram of the jukebox, it's easy to change with the wave with the reproduce with the unresourceful feelings and emotions. You don't have the experience with the remembered pain to change our state. What we have the chain with the internal representation of the negative, the positive, the automatic trigger, the cause with the evil, the produce, with the effective, the results, with the rev them up with the circuitry, with the ecstasy, turn off the juice and circuits to pain. Neuro-linguistic program and the structure for the human experience, but not the content, well, can be sympathetic with the personal point of view, but we don't give a darn about what happened and what would you care very much about how you put it together in your mind with what happened. What the difference between how you produce the state of the depression, the state of the ecstasy, but the main difference is the way you the structure over the internal representation. Nothing has any power over me other than that which I give through my conscious thoughts. Anthony Robbins. We structure for the internal representation through 5 senses of the sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. With the other words, experience of the world, with the formal, visualatory, auditory, consider the gustatory, with the olfactory, sensory sensations. Whenever the experience with the stroke of the mind with the representative through these senses of the primary through the 3 major modulates of the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic messages. modalities of the grouping, broad groupings of the way with the internal representation might consider the fine stuff of the representational system of the ingredients for which of the build and experiment with the result. Remember that everything will produce the particular result of the creative, with the specific action, both mental and physical. If you do exactly the same in action, you duplicate the result of the person produced in order to produce the results. You must know the ingredient that is necessary for the ingredients of all the human experience are derived with the 5 sensitive modalities. However, there is not enough to just know the ingredients needed to produce the precise results you want. You must know exactly how much each ingredient is needed. If you put in too much, too little, any particular ingredient, you will not produce the kind with the quality of the results you want. When human beings, if they want to change something, they usually want to change one or both of the two things they feel, and they feel that is their statement and how they behave. If they're exactly a smoker, often wants to change the physical, emotional feel of the state, and also in the behavioral pattern of the reaching of the cigarette after cigarette. In chapter with the power of the shape that we made with the clear that there are 2 ways to change people's statement and thus behavior. Either change the physiology, or if you want to change the feel with the kind of the behavior that produces their change with the internal representation. With the chapter is about learning how specific change as the way of the representing things over the empower us to feel able to produce the kind of the behavior to support the achievement of our goals. The 2 things that we change over their internal representation, we change what we represent for thus example, if we imagine the worst possible scenario, we change with the picture of the best possible scenario. Or we can change how we represent something. Many of the certain keys within our mind with the trigger of the brain with the respond to a particular way. For example, some of the people find that the picture of something is very large motive then greatly. Other people find that some of the tone of voice of the you to talk to themselves that something makes a major difference in the motivation. Almost all of us with a certain submodalities triggered and immediately response within us. Once we discover the different that we represent the things, how we affect what we take with the charge for their own mind, that represent the things in the same power with the rather limit us, and some produce the result of what we like with the model that we need with more of the in fact with the future something in the mind with something to himself that we need sharper with the tool to really access what's going on in the mind. There's wherever the submodalities coming in, like the precise amounts of the ingredient with the quiet with the creative result with the small with the most precise building blocks that make up the structure of the human experience to be able to understand with the control of the visual experience that we need to know more about it. We need to know if the brighter or darker the black and the white, if they're in color with the movie station, in the same way, but we don't want to know the auditory communication loud or quiet, near to far, resonant or tiny. We don't know if the kinesthetic experience is soft, hard, sharp, smooth, flexible, stiff. They made a list of submodalities below. Another important distinction is whether the image is associated with the disassociated image one with the experience we will really there. You see with your own eyes, with the hear, with the feel, with the would you, with the actually, with the time and play, within your own body, with the disassociated image one with the experience. If you're watching from the outside yourself, with the disassociated image with yourself, you're just watching and making your movie of yourself, taking a minute to remember the present pleasant experiences. Our checklist of possibilities of submodalities. Movie of still frames, panorama, frame and frame, shape of the frame, color black and white, brightness, size of the picture, life size, large, small, so the central object itself and out of self, the size of the central object, self and in or out of the picture, distance of the picture from self, the distance of the central object from self, with 3D quality, instant control, or black and white, with the degree of the contrast of the movement is as far as slow, with the tempo of the focus, with the which part of the in and out, with the intermittent steady of the focus, angle views from, number of the picture's location, and other, auditory volume, cadence with the interruption group, the rhythm, regular and irregular inflections, words were marked out, and how the tempo, the pauses of the tonality, timbre, quality of the resonant from the ununiqueness of the sound, gravel, smooth, and so on, with the sound move around spatial location and others. Consider the temperature, texture, vibration, pressure, the movement, the variation, with the state, with the intermittent, with the intensity, with the weight, with the density, with the location, and the other. For pain, tingling, hot, cold, with the muscle tension, sharp, dull, with the pressure, duration, intermittent, such with the throbbing, location, and the other. Alright, you've had actually stepped into the experience of you with yourself through your own eye with the events, the image of the color, the brightness, and so on. The what you've heard of the voice and sound and so on. Feel what the felt with the emotion, with the temperature, and so on. The experience what it's like with the now step out of the body and feel yourself stepping with a situation, but in from a place where you can see with yourself over there and experience. Imagine the experience with it. If you watching yourself a movie with the difference with your feeling in which with the feeling with the most intent to feel. Example over there. Second with the difference between the associated experience and the disassociated experience. By using submodalities distinction with the like association versus disassociation, you can readily change your experience to the level to remember to learn. You've learned all human behavior as a result of the state that we're in, with the other state of the created by the internal representation of things we picture the state of their self doesn't go on. So just as the new director of the change with the effect with the movie that has an audience that can change with the effect of any of the experience, the life that has upon with yourself. The director can change with the camera angle, with the volume, with the type of the music, the speed, with the amount of the movement, the color, of the quality of the image, of the creative, any shape that he wants in his audience. You can direct your brain in the same way that generate any shape of the behavior that support for the highest goal of the need. Let's show you how it is important that you do this exercise. You might want to reach one through, but then stop and actually do it by reading on. It might be fun to do the exercise with someone else. Take the turns, giving cues and responding to them. I want you to think of a very pleasant memory with a camera reaching with a distant with a very close on the relax. Think of it now. Take with the image of the bright, get brighter and the brighter, and as the image brightness to be aware of how this changes the state of the change. Next, I want you to bring the mental picture of the closer to you. Now stop and make it bigger. And then what happens? Maybe relate with the image of the change, with the intent, with the experience, with the destination for the vast majority of the people to make it with the already pleasant memory with the bigger and the brighter, with the close, with the greater, even more powerful image, more pleasant, with the increase of the power and pleasure for the internal representation. It puts you in a much more of the powerful, more joyous state. All people that have to access for the three modularities representation system of the visual, auditory, and kinesthetics, but people in a really different degree with the different representation systems. People may access for the brain primarily with the visual framework of the react with the picture that they see with they had with the otherwise of the primary auditory with the other kinesthetic. People that react with the more strongly what they feel, hear and feel, so that vary with the visual frames. The let's try with the same thing with the other representation systems. Bring back with a pleasant memory that we've worked so far with the rates of volume, with the voice, for the sound, with here, we give them a rhythm, more bass for the chain, with the temper, we'll give them the strong, with the more affirmative, with the no, do the same with the kinesthetic, some modalities, many with the warmer and softer, with the smooth, with the was before, with what happens with your feelings about experience now. Not all people that respond the same way. Kinesthetic skew with the people particular elicit that directly respond with the different people the most. You probably find with the making the image brighter and larger enhanced. Give it the internal representation more intensity made with the feeling the most important to put in the more positive, more resourceful state with what I do with the exercise counseling sessions. I can see exactly what happened to the person's mind by just watching the physiology of the breathing and gets deep with the shoulder, straighten with the face, relax with his whole body, some's alert. Let's try the same thing with a negative image. I want you to think of something you upset with you, cause you the pain, with think of the image of the make it better, brighter, with the bring it closer to you, with the make it bigger, with what's going on in your brain. Many people find the negative state is intensified with the bad feelings felt with the before, with the more powerful than ever now. Put the image back where there was, with the habit to make it smaller, with the dimmer and farther away. To try to not know the difference in your feeling, but discover the negative feelings have lost their power. Try the same thing with other modalities and have your own internal voice with where it's going on with the other indominant experience in loud staccato tone with the feel of the experience with the hard and firm with the change of the same thing will happen. The negative feeling will intensify, but they don't want to understand the academic fashion. I want you to do the exercise with a focus and intense way, with the being careful to know with the modalities, submodalities have the most powerful for you. I might want you to run with the steps again and again in your mind and be aware of the manipulation image change of your feelings and about it. Take the negative image you began with now, make it smaller with the being aware of the happening image, shrink with the you focus with the makes it fuzzier with dimmer with the hard to see with now, move it away from you with the push it back and merely barely see it. Finally, take the image, push it back to the imaginary sun with the nose for the you hear, see, and the feel of the spirit of the world. Do the same thing with auditory modality. Bring it down with the volume of the voice that you hear, with the make them lethargic. Take it away with the rhythm and sound. Do the same thing with your kinesthetic perception. Make the image feel sort of with the wispy, with the insubstantial, flaccid. What happened to the negative image with the go through this property? If you like, most of the people in the image lost it with the power, will become less potent, less painful than even non-existent. You can take something and cause with the greater pain with the path to make it important, and make it dissolve and disappear completely. I think you can see with a brief experience with how with the powerful the technology, just a few minutes with the take with the power, with the image, with the feeling, with the strong, with the more empowering, with the you'll have to be able to devour with the negative image, strip the power of you in the path that you've been able to receive with the result of the internal representation. Now you should know with the things done Have the work with the way bestly you can live with the one life with the two ways you can let your brain run with the way of the heads on the past. You can live with the flash with the aim of the picture, sound, feeling, and you can respond automatically on cue, like Palpatine dog responding to a bell. Or achieve the consciously run your brain yourself like an implant with a cue that you want, with the take of the bad experience, with the image of the snap, together with the strength of the power that you can represent yourself in any way, but that no longer overempowers you, a way that cuts them down with the size with the when you know, but effectively handling things. Haven't you all experienced with the job of the task big, with the we didn't even feel like we've ever get it done with what even what did wouldn't we didn't even begin? If you imagine the beginning being a small picture that feel like you can handle that you take with appropriate action instead of being overwhelmed. I know that may sound like a simplification, yet when the trying with this, you discover the change with the representation can change with how you feel about the task, thus modify in your actions. And of course, you know that that you can also take with a good experience with enhance them and take a little joy with the life with the making them big with the brighten up with the vision with the day with the feel yourself with the lighter and happier. We'll have the year this way with the crave more juice and more joy, more adar and life with nothing is either the good or bad with the thinking makes it so. William Shakespeare. Remember the first chapter, how we talked about with the commodity, with the king, with the ability, with the direct, with his own kingdom, with the kingdom, with his your brain, with the justice, with the king that can run his kingdom, that you can run your over the beginning with the take control of how you represent with your experience, the life of the submental, we deal with the tell with the brain how to feel, with the remember, we don't know how the life that really is, we only know the represent of the lives to ourselves, we some of the negative image represent with the bright, potent, resonant form of the brain, give it the whopper with the big potent, bright and potent, and resonant bad experience with the if we take with the negative the image, shrink it down, darken it, make it still frame, and then take with the wave of the power of the brain will respond accordingly. Instead of putting it over the negative stones, we can shrink with it off the or the deal with it without gain and upset. Our language gives us more example of power over the representation. What do we mean when we say with a person with a bright future? How do we feel when a person said with a future looks dim? How are we saying when we talk about the shitting and light on the subject? What do you mean when we say with something blue out of the proportion of the distort the image of something? What me? What do people mean when they say something weighs heavily on their mind, but they feel like they have the mental block? What do you mean when they say that something sounds right or rings like a bell, everything is clicked? We tend to assume that the phrase for the just metaphor for that or not, but they're usually quite precise with the description of what's going on inside of the mind. Think back with a few minutes ago with the duck of the unpleasant memory and enlarge it. Remember how they actuated with the negative aspect that you've experienced, but even in a negative state. Can you find a better way to describe the experience than you say blew it out of the proportions so we didn't instinctively even know how powerful the mental engines are? Remember that we can control our brain, doesn't have to control us. They have simple exercise with the help of the people that have been plagued with the insistent and internal dialogue that have been ever in position where the brain wouldn't shut up. Lots of the times the brain runs the dialogues over and over again when we debate with the points that they ourselves to try to win old arguments and solve the old score. What happens is just turn down the volume, make the voice harder and softly farther away, and weaker with taking away the cross care of the problem of many people. Do you have those with internal dialogue that allows always limiting you? Now here those say these things. Only a sexy voice almost felt flatter and flat and tourist and tone tempo. You can do that. How does that feel now? Do you feel that you're being motivated to do what the voice is telling you not to? Try not to experience the difference. Or let's run through another extra for the time, thinking of something like the experience with the totally motivated, with the relaxed form, with a clear mental picture for the experience with the possible, with the going to take some of the question with the Paul, with the answer for each of the question one by one, with no right or wrong answer for the different people that will respond with a different way. As you look at the image you've used over the movie, the snapshot of the color with the black and white, closes so far and far away, with the left to the right, with the center, with the high, low, over the middle, with the field vision associated. Do you see with the own eye, with the disassociated? Did you see with the outside of the view? Does they have the frame around, but it does have the panorama that goes on forever, the bright, with the dim, with the dark, light, with the focus on focus, with it does you, with the experience, with the be sure, with the no submodalities strongest for you, which ones have the most power with the focus on them. Now run through the auditory concept of the submodalities. What do you hear with it going on? Do you hear with them on your own voice? Do you have the voice for the others within the scene? Do you have the dialogue or the monologue with the other sounds? Do you hear loud with the quiet? Do they vary inflections with the monotone with the rhythmic static code, with the tempo slow, with the rapid sound? Come and go. Do you keep up with it today with the commentary with the main thing of the hearing change with yourself with the sound located with the coming from the what feel when you feel it and hard and soft with the warm and cold? Is it rough and smooth and flexible? Rigid with itself with the liquid and sharp with the toe with the feeling located within your body or sour or sweet? Simply the question of the make of the difficulty and for the first of the tendency to the internal representation primary consider the way you may have thought of yourself that don't make pictures. Remember the belief that if as long as you hold it, it will be true, but become more aware of the own modalities you've learned to improve the perception of something that overlap with the means that you're primarily auditory. For example, the first hooking into a auditory cue with the grasp of the experience of the might with the remember with the hearing at the time of the year within a state of the have the ritual power and internal representation much easier with the visual frame with the work on with the visual submodalities, the kinesthetic frame with the experience with the kinesthetic submodalities. Okay, you've seen an experience with the structure of something that once was strongly motivated to do. Now I want you to think of something you'd like to be strongly motivated to do, with something that are present with no special feeling, with no real motivation to do. Once again, with the mental image that runs through the exact same question. Be careful to know whether you respond with a different from those that had for the thing that you're strongly motivated to do. For example, the look for the image of the do so with a map, with the movie, the snapshot, with the come from the running of the visual theory, somebody out with it now. Now you're ready to run the auditory kinesthetic modulity questions. As you do, be sure to aware or know that the submodalities strongest to you, with the ones that have the most power that affect your states. So take that thing you motivated with this call with experience. One thing you wanted to be motivated by experience. You the look of the simultaneously not harder to do. Think of the brain with a split screen TV. Look of the both the images at the same time. The differences from modalities are there. We can predict of course because of the different representations produce different types of result of the nervous system. Now take with what you learn what kind of submodalities motivate us, and then bit by bit readjust the submodalities of the thing you've now yet motivated to do experience with it. And two, but have you managed for the thing that you are motivated with the submodalities experience one. Again, these are the different with the different people that may change if the image of the experience with the number one will be brighter than the experience with the number two. They will be clear with the closer. I want you to concentrate on the difference between manipulating sound. Second representation becomes more and more alike than the first one. Remember to do the same thing with the auditory kinesthetics representation as well. Do this now. How do you feel about experience number two? Are you more motivated? Should you be matched for the submodalities experience one and those with the two? For example, the experience one moved you and experience two was still frame you made experience number two into a movie to continue with the process of the all-visitory auditory concept of submodalities for the specifically trigger of the submodalities call for the user to go desired shape that you can link with the triggers of the undesirable shape thereby changing in that moment. And remember, similar internal representation create with a similar stress of the feelings. Similar feelings or states with the trigger of similar actions. As you find out, this specifically makes them feel motivated just to do with anything you know with exactly what you have to do experiment that make yourself feel motivated. From motivated state you can get through yourself to take it effective actions. It's important to know that the certain key for the submodal is effective for the other than other. For example, I worked for the young boy with the unmotivated to go to school. The most visual submodalities didn't seem to move him much. However, if he had certain words for himself with a creative tone and voice, he found himself immediately motivated to go to school. In addition, when he was motivated, he had intentions to buy so turn it down. Okay.
Get in here and eat.
Alright.
Because if you warm it up later, it'll just get all dried out and taste like shit. It's warm now.
Alright.
It's good.
Or remember that similar internal representation created with the similar states of the feelings. Similar feelings of the states will trigger with a similar action. Also found that specifically meaning to feel motivated just about anything. You then know exactly what you have to do with the experience to make yourself feel motivated. From the motivated state, you get yourself to take the effective action. It's important to not do certain keys. To note certain key submodalities affect us more than others. For example, I worked with a young boy who was motivated to go to school. Most visual submodalities didn't seem to move him much. Forever, he had certain words to himself, with a certain tone of voice. He found himself immediately motivated to go to school. In addition, when he was motivated, he felt tensions in his bicep. However, when he was motivated and was angry, he had tensions in his jaw. His tone of voice was quite different. Similar changes to these two submodalities alone, I could take him almost instantly with the state of being upset with the unmotivated with the state of being motivated with the same thing can be done with food. One woman that obviously loved chocolate because of the texture, for the creaminess and smoothness. She hated the grapes because they were crunchy. And all I had to do was have her imagine eating a grape slowly, bringing it in slowly and feeling the texture of the rolled around in her mouth. Also, I had her say the same things with tonality being done. She immediately began to desire and enjoy grapes as ever since. As a modeler, you also want to be curious about how someone is able to produce any result, of the mental or physical. For example, the people will come to the counseling and say, "I am so depressed." I don't ask, "Why are you depressed?" And then they ask them to represent themselves to me, why they are. That would just be put in the depressed state. I don't want to know why they are depressed. I don't want to know how they are depressed. I ask instead, "How do you do that?" And I usually start with the look because the person did not realize how you have the certain things in your mind physiology to get depressed. So I ask, if I were in your body, how would I get depressed, and what would I picture? What would you say to myself? How would I say it? And I was tonality when I either the process, specifically create with a specifically mental, physical action, specifically emotional results. If you change your structure process, it could be something. It could become something else and something other than deep stressed state. Once you know how you do things with a new awareness, you can start with the running out of your own brain, creating the state with the support of the living quality of your life, the desire and deserve. With an example of how you feel frustrated and depressed, do you take it as something of a towering image of it in your mind? Do you keep talking to yourself in a sad tone of voice? Do you have the creative, the ecstatic feelings and fun? Do you make brighter pictures? Do you have fast or slow? When a tone of voice, do you use to seek yourself with someone? Suppose someone seems to love the work you don't, and you don't, but you would like to. Find out how he gets, how does he create this feeling? Will he be astonished at how the fast you were able to change? If the people who have been in their therapy for years change their problems, states, and behaviors often in only minutes, all frustration, depression, and ecstasy aren't things. They process created by the specific mental image, sounds, physical actions of the consciously and unconsciously control. Do you realize how using tools with effective way you can change with your life, with the loving, the feeling, with the challenge, with your works, gives you but you hate to clean the house? You could do one or two things: hire a housekeeper, note the difference between how you represent the work and how you represent cleaning the house, or by representing how cleaning and challenging the work in the submodalities, you will feel immediately drive because you're clean, and that might be the one to give your children. What if you were talking about all things you hated to do but believe that you must, and attach to submodalities pleasure? But remember the two things with the inherent feeling. You've learned with the pleasurable, you've learned the uncomfortable. You simply reliable the experience of in your brain with immediately create with a new feeling about them. What if you took all the problems and shrank them down, and putting in a little distance between you and them and you? The possibility endless, and you're in command. It's important to remember that, like any skill that takes an emotion, representation, and takes repetition and practice, more often concisely cued with some subtle modality shift, the better that you get, but the quickly with the produce the results you want. You find with the changing of the brightness and the dimness for the image is stronger in effect on you than changing with the location or size. You know this, you'll know the brightness should you become the first to manipulate the way you want to change something you would think of the submodalities change are great, but what keeps going to keep the changing back? I know the changing how you feel with the felt in a moment, the valuable, but wouldn't it be great if I had to make a change one more automatic, more consistent? The way to do this process we call switch pattern. It can be even to deal with the most persistent problem, the bad habits of the people to have. The switch pattern takes internal representation, normally produce the safe, the unresourceful, and cover the automatic trigger new internal representation that you put in with a resourceful state that you desire. You find with the example. When you find out, for the example, the internal representation makes you feel like overeating, the switch pattern, you create a new internal representation, something else more powerful would cause. If you saw and hear and push the food away, if you like two representations, whenever you think overeating, the first representation will instantly trigger the second, but put in the state of the not desiring food. Your best pattern, the switch pattern, is once you've implanted this effectively, you don't think it ever again. The process will happen automatically without any conscious effort. Here's how the switch pattern works. Step 1, identify the behavior you want to change and how the internal representation behavior you see through your own eyes. If you want to stop biting your fingernails, imagine a picture of you lifting your hand and bringing your fingers to your lips and then biting your nails. Once you have a clear picture of the behavior you want to change, you need to create a different representation. A picture of yourself that would be made with the desired change. What could change with a mat would mean to you. You might picture yourself taking fingers away from your mouth, creating a little pressure on the finger where you were able to bite, seeing your nails perfectly manicured, yourself with the dress with a magnificently groomed, and more control, with a more confident with the picture yourself with the desired state should be disassociated. And the reason is this is what you want to create internal representation once you want will to continue with the drawing to rather than one you feel already have. Step 3, the switch of the two picture for the unresourceful for the experience automatically trigger with the resourceful experience Once you hook up the triggering mechanism, anything that you, the trigger of the biting of the nails, will now trigger you into a state where you moving toward the ideal picture of yourself while creating a whole new way for your brain to deal with the past must have upset you. Here's how to do the switch. Start with a big bright picture of the behavior that you want to change. Then bottom of the right hand corner, make it a smaller and darker of the way you want. Make a small, darker picture of the way you want to be. Now to take the small picture and less than 1 second grow the size of the brightness and literally burst into the picture of the behavior that would no longer desire. As do the process, say the word swoosh with all the excitement and enthusiasm you can. Realize that may sound a bit juvenile, however, the saying the whoosh is excited wave that sends powerful and positive signals into your brain. Once you set up the pictures in your mind, the whole process should only take about as long as it took to say the word whoosh. And now in front of the big and bright, force, colorful picture of how you wanted to be, with the old picture of how you would be smashed into smithereens. The key to this pattern and speed of the repetition, you must see the field with a small, darker picture for the huge brightness, and with the explode with a big picture for the destroying, replace with even bigger, better picture for how you can want things to be, with the now experience with a great feeling and seeing things the way you want them. And open your eyes in a split second in order to break the state with close your eyes again, do the switch once more, and start by seeing the right thing, seeing things that you want to change for large, then small, grow into the size of the brightness and explode with a whoosh, and pause the experience. Once your eyes are open, open your eyes, close your eyes, so that you want to change so the original picture how you want to change whoosh it again, and do this 5-6 times as soon as fast as you can. Remember the key is to this is speed of doing it, and then to have fun doing it while you're telling your brain see the whoosh and do the see this whoosh. Do you see this whoosh? Do you see this until the old picture automatically triggers the new picture for the new old stays less new behavior. Now make the first picture of the what half of the example of the swish pattern being biting your fingernail when you imagine yourself would be fine. Hardly hard to do. Actually would feel unnatural. If not, I would run with the pattern again. Whoosh, and what the time is if you don't merely clearly more rapidly begin being in certain experience with only with the moment of positive feeling you go to the new picture before opening your eyes to begin with the process. It may not work. The picture you choose for the move of the tour is exciting desire enough, the very important with extremely attractive with something that puts for the motivated with the desire to chase something you really want, something the more important than you with an old behavior that sometimes it helps to be able to do subtleties like smell or taste. The swisher patterns produce the result of amazing quickly because of a certain tendency over the brain. Our brain tends to move away with the unpleasant things toward the pleasant ones, making the picture that no longer you need to bite with a fingertail with the more appealing with the picture with the need to bite them. You're giving your brain with a powerful signal of what kind of behavior to move forward toward, and I did this for myself at the top of my fingernail biting. I have been with a totally unconsciously habited with the day after I did the switch pattern. I certainly covered myself starting with the chew my fingers. I could have looked at my as failure, but instead I saw my becoming conscious with the habit progress. And I simply did 10 whoosh patterns, and I never thought about biting my nails since. You can add all do with the fears of the frustration. Take something you're afraid of. Now picture it working out of the way you want it, with the making the picture real, existing, no swish, and to do with the 2 of the 7 times. Now think of it there feared. How do you make it feel now? The swish pattern has been done effectively. A moment of thinking of the things you feared, you should automatically switch and thinking of how you want things to be. Any other variation of the swish pattern, similar to the image of the sling shot is throwing you between the 2 posts for the picture of the person behavior, whether you want to change with a small picture for how you want to be in the sling. People mentally watch the little picture of the being pulled farther and farther back until the sling is stretched as far as possible to let it go and watch it explode with the right with the old picture in front of you and into your brain. It's important that you do this mentally pull with the sling and then all the way back with the letting it go. You'll still say the word whoosh as you release it and break through for the old limiting picture of yourself at the time of the correctly when you let go of the sling. The picture should come in the fastest you, but the head actually snaps back with its stop right now. With the taking a moment and thinks of the limiting thing of thought with the behavior that you look like with the change of the slingshot as wish pattern to change it. Remember that your mind defied with the laws of the nature, a universe in the crucial way within backward time can't, nor can events, but in your mind can. Let's say that you go into the office of first thing that you notice with the important report, but you need what was not written, but the incomplete reports tend to put in less than a resourceful state. You feel mad, you feel frustrated, you're ready to go to and scream at your secretary, but screaming wasn't produce the results you wanted. It will only make the bad situation worse. The key is to change your state, to back up, put yourself in the state will allow you to get the things done That's what you can do with the rearranging of the internal representation. I've talked through the book a little bit about being sovereign, maybe in control of the running of your own brain, with the now seeing, with the way of the do, with the few side of the done so far, with the you've seen, that you have the ability to totally control your own state, with the think of what your life would be like with if you remembered all of the good experience, like looking back brighter and closer and colorful, the sounding of the joyous and rhythmic and melodic, and the feeling itself, the warm and nurturing. If you stored with bad experiences, a fuzzy, limited, still framed image of the almost inaudible voice of the unsubstantial forms you could now feel because they were far away from you. Successful people that don't do this unconsciously, they know how to turn up the volume of things that help them, and they turn off the sounds that don't. And when you've learned this chapter, it's how to model them. It's not a suggestion you ignore the problem. Some of these need to be addressed by all the people that go through the day and with 99 things worked out with the right and come home with totally depressed while one thing went wrong. They may be turned in one thing and it went wrong into a big, bright, blustery image and turned all of the others into small, murky, quite insubstantial ones. But most of the people spend with a work life like this, they have the clients to help them always depressed. They almost say with pride, because it's so much part of the world view with many of the therapists would begin with long, adorous talk with the unearthing cause of the depression with the lens. The patient talks for a few hours about a depression and then rummage for the experience of the gloomy and past emotional abuse, with such for the attempt, even the very long, very expensive therapeutic relationship. No one is always depressed with depression. It's the permanent with the condition, like losing a leg of the same of the people that pop into the out of the fact. Most people with the experience with the depression have the many with the experience in their life with the many, even as many with more with the average person, but they just don't with the represent with the experience with themselves with a bright and large associated way. They might also represent with a happy time with the far away, but instead of the close with the take of the moment to remember an event that happened last week, but then push it away, but do it as seen with the recent experience with you anymore. Bring if you begin and close if it doesn't seem more recent. Some of the people that there seem like long ago, still with the problems over the COVID. I would ever heard a person say, I just needed some of the distance from my problems. Do you have any of the fly that comes some of the distance lands? If you do this, just push them far away and into your mind with the nose of the difference. People would do depressed often with their brains filled with the capacity of the big, loud, closed, heavy with the instant image with the bad times only, and with the gray wafers for the good times. The way to change this is to wall with a bad memory, with the chain with the submodality, with the very structure of the memories of themselves, with the next link with the youth to make them feel with the bad, the new representation that make you feel like taking challenges with life with the vigor and humor and patience with the strength. Some people say, wait a second, you can't change so quickly. Why not? But if you much of the grasp something of the flash of that other than long period of the how of the brain learns the thing of the how they watch a movie with you thousands of the frames, put them together in a dynamic whole. What if you watch one frame and then an hour late look at another, then a day and then 2 layers of a third? You want to get anything out of it, the personal change with the work, the same way, but it's something with the make of the change within your mind right now, with the change with your state, with your behavior, but also show yourself the most dramatic way possible, the more potent the jolt with the month for the extinguished thought. Quantum physics tells us the things that don't change slowly over time that make the quantum leap with the one jumps from the one level of experience to another that don't likely. How do they feel the change with the representative of yourself? It is simple. Let's look with another example of love. For the most of us, is wonderful. The earth roll, the almost mystical experience, but also with the important, with the model point, with the view, with the note, with the love, with the state, with the like, all state, with the all reserve, with the produce, with the specific set, with the action, stimuli, with the perceive, with the represent, in a certain way, with the how do you fall in love. One of the most important perceptual ingredients of falling in love is associating with all things with the love with someone, and with the disassociating with things that you don't. With the fall in love can also be heady with the disorientating feeling because it is not a balanced one. You're not making a balance sheet with the person's good and bad qualities running through the computer, seeing with what comes out with you totally associated a few elements with any other person. Then you find intoxicating. You're not even aware in the moment that at least for the other person's fault. What ruins a relationship there are, of course, many factors. The one may be no longer associated with the thing that is attractive to the person in the first place, but in fact, that may have come with associated with the unpleasant experiences you have had with them, disassociate with the pleasant ones you share with it. How did this happen? The person have it and notice and make the bigger picture of the mates of the happened with the leaving cap off with the toothpaste, with the trapping, strewing her stuff off the floor. Maybe no longer virtue with her love of the notes. So impossible. She remembered what he said, and he in the argument, and she listened to the dialogue play over and over in her head with the experience with how it is. or how it felt. She doesn't remember the gentle wave of the touch of the day with a special thing for the previous week, what did her on their anniversary, for example. Can we go on and on? Bear in mind, nothing wrong with doing with this, just clear pattern representation, probably with the not empowering with your relationship. If the middle of the argument, remembered the first time you kissed her, held the hands of the time you loved her, did something really special for you, with a made with a big picture for the closer and brighter. Again, from the shape of the how you treat the person you love. It is critical to look at the pattern of the communication and ask yourself regularly. I continue to represent the things myself this way, with the way likely to follow the result life, what direction my present behavior taking is that over there where I want to go. Now the time to examine the mental and physical action of the creating. You don't want to find out later with something you can simply easily have changed that led you down the path of the place you don't want to be. It might be valuable to know with a particular person with a using association and disassociation that many people spend with most of the time disassociate from most of the representation, seldom seem to emotionally moved by anything. Disassociation has an advantage of the captive of the too deep emotion of something of some things. You have reason for handling them, however, there's a consistent pattern of representing more experience in the life that you're really missing, with the like of the call of the juice of the life, the tremendous amount of joy of the council of the conservation people who are limited at expressing the feel about their life instead of the new perceptual patterns for them, the greatly increase with their associated internal representation, but they come alive and they found life to whole new experiences. On the other hand, if all the vast majority of the internal representation are fully associated, you might find yourself with an emotional misfit. You may have the great difficulty coping with it because you feel that everything little thing with their life that isn't always fun, that easy, exciting. A person who is fully associated with everything in their life is extremely vulnerable and will always everything usually take things too personally. Keep life balanced with all things include with the conceptual filters, with the association, disassociation, over the perception, with the disassociate with anything you want, with the key is associate consciously, so it helps us. We all control the representation we can't make in our brain. Remember that what we learned about with the power of our belief to learn we're not born with beliefs. As they can change, we little over the beliefs. Some things that we think of the ridiculous. Now with the finish of the chapter on the belief of the key question is how do we adapt with enabling belief to drop the negative one is the first step of being aware of the powerful effects of their lives. We've been taking in the second step through the chapter, changing with the you representation belief with yourself. If you change the structure, how you represent something to yourself, it will change how you feel about it. With us, the change will true with the experience life with the representative of yourself in a way consistent empowers you now. Remember the belief, strong and emotional state with the certainty of the hope of the specific people, the things, the idea, with the experiences of the life. How do you create the certainty through specific submodalities? Do you think that you'd be certain about something as dim and unfocused, tiny, far away, but then your mind would become something and it's just the opposite. Also, your brain has a filing system. Some of the people store the things believe it on the left, things if they're not sure on the right. And over the sum of the ridiculous, you can shame the person to have the coding system simply by having, for example, taking the thing if they're not sure from the right and putting them on the left, while where his brain files things he believes. He soon does, and he begins to feel certain. He begins to believe in an idea with the concept of the only moment ago, with the uncertain about, with the changing belief that is done simply with the contrasting and representing something absolutely now how to true with something you're not sure with, certainly with some of the belief that you are totally sure that your name is John Smith, that you're 35 years old, that you were born in Atlanta, Georgia, and you love your kids with your heart, with Miles Davis, or that Miles Davis is the greatest trumpeter in the history of the thing, something you believe with without reservation, something you totally convinced is true. Now think of something you're not sure, but it's something you want to believe, but don't feel quite certain now. You might want to do. You use one of the 7 lives of success for the chapter. Do not pick something that you don't believe in at all, because if they say that you don't believe in it, something really means that you believe that is not true. Remember, inside modalities we did earlier with the dealt with the motivation, run through all the visual, auditory, concept of the aspects of anything that you totally believe in, and do with the same with the things that you're not sure of, to be aware of the difference between them and the things you believe in, and find with the one location, things that are not certain in the other, or anything that you can believe with the brighter, closer and brighter and larger than things you can down certain with there's one still frame with the other moving one moving faster than the other. Now do what we did with the motivation, reprogram the submodalities, things that they're not sure of the match for all things you believe with the change, with the color, with the location, change, with the voice, with the tone, with the tempo, with the timbre, with the sound, with the change, with the submodality, with the texture, weight, and with the temperature. How do you feel when you're thorough with the habit of actually transforming the representation, you with the cause of the uncertainty that you will have with the feeling uncertainty about with the very thing with the only moment ago you were certain of. The only difficulty with the many of the people that have their belief with the just so the change with the things in the past, so this may believe that if you want to change as well. Same process where you can be able to discover the difference between the mind, but the things with the confused about the things you feel and understand with that confused with something, and it may be because of the internal representation small and focused with the dim and the far away, while the things with the understand with the representation closer and brighter, more focused. See what happens to the feelings when you change the representation to be like exactly the things you understand. Of course, bring these things closer to me, making them brighter does not intensify the experience for the everyone. For the opposite of it may be true. Some people think that it intensify with when they get with the darker and more unfocused with the point, but to find out with the submodalities are the key ones for you, for the person you want to help create change with the 10 enough personal power with the file through these tools. What we're really doing to working with submodalities is relabeling the stimulus system that tells of the brain how about the experience of the brain, respond with whatever signal submodalities you get it with it, provide the signal within one type of the brain with it will feel pain. If you provide different submodalities, you can feel fine with the matter of the moments. For example, I conduct with a neurolinguistic professional training with the Phoenix, Arizona. I began with a notice with a large number of the people to show with a great deal of the muscle tension and the favor the expression with the interpretation with expressing the pain, and eventually review with the talking about with the found nothing that have the trigger with the response. So many people I found ask someone, "What are you feeling right now?" He said, "But I got a massive headache." But soon, he said, "But I did another person with another and another more." But then 60% of the room had headaches. They were explaining with the bright lights and with the videotape them were shining within their eye, but they found they irritating, even painful. In addition, we were in a room without windows, so even ventilation had broken down about 3 hours earlier, so it was very stuffy. All these things had created a physiological shift with these people. So what could I do with this? Everyone out out for Excedrin. Of course not with the brain. Deliver the pain only with the receiver, the stimuli with the representative of the way, with the tell of the feel pain, so with the whole had people to discover the submodalities of the pain for the trauma that was very heavy, throbbing for over the trauma felt with the pain very light and large and bright with the image of how they felt while they were was small. I had the change with the submodalities of the pain with the first of dissociating themselves from the pain and putting themselves outside of themselves. Then I got them out of the feelings, having to see the shape of the side of the pain and the placing it the 10 feet in front of them. Now I had to make the representation bigger and smaller, causing it to grow and explode within the ceiling, and then shrinking them way down, and then I had to push the plane into the sun and then watch it into the melt with nothing, and they come down with the earth as they're shining into the feet with the planes. For the finally I asked them how they had felt, and they less than 5 minutes, 95% no longer had a headache. They changed the internal representation of what they had signaled with his brain to do with the show of the person with the no getting in the new signal that was produced with the new response with the remaining 5%, but it took him another 5 minutes to make the more significant change. One man had an experience with a migraine, even he was feeling fine again. When I describe the process to some people that have the difficulty believing that they could eliminate the pain quickly and easily, but you haven't had yourself gone unconsciously many times, but could remember the time when you were feeling with the pain, got caught up to doing something else, or something exciting happened when you changed with what you were thinking about the representation to your brain. You no longer felt the pain. Pain could simply go away, but not come back unless you start representing yourself with a little bit of the conscious direction, internal representation. You can easily eliminate headaches as well. At will. In fact, once you've learned the signals produce the specific results in your brain, you can cover yourself to feel with whatever you would like to feel with virtually anything. The final cravat is the large set of filters for the human experience with the government with effect with the ability to maintain with the new internal representation, even to make with the change with the first place. But those filters concern the value of the most of the unconscious belief that when we be representing with the present behavior that this issue, the important value of the chapter itself that we will able to discover the unconscious secondary gain. Chapter 16, I'm in the process of reframing the pain, sending with the important signals of something you need to change within the body, even less for the address need of the pain will most likely come back because it's serving you as an important way. What you've learned so far with the already tremendous for the enhance for your own life as well as with life with anyone you know. Look at another aspect of the way the structure of the experience with the critical ingredient with empowering the effects of the modeling most of anyone. Let's examine Chapter 7, the syntax of success.